At the beginning, we thought the Iraqi are coming.
All of a sudden, I see this flying object just going round and round and round and going up and up and up. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I just saw a flying saucer. I saw a UFO.
I was going to prepare myself to shoot it down.
It was seen by civilians, pilots, generals, and the unerring eye of Air Force radar. Reports ricocheted from the Shah to President Ford and back again. The film that you're watching recreates the day's events with the actual military personnel who witnessed the most compelling UFO encounter sightings has ever investigated. This film, seen here for the first time outside of Iran, was produced by the government and, in a bizarre twist of fate, would one day be used by the Ayatollah Khomeini to discredit the Shah.
When I saw this object is flying that fast, then I thought this is not a helicopter and this is not an aircraft. By that time I said, oh, should be some kind of a UFO.
Radar readings taken inside the control tower at Mirabad Air Force Base indicated the object was at least as large as a Boeing 707 tanker. The situation was serious. Brigadier General Nader Yousefi, base operations commander and the number 3 man in the Iranian Air Force, was notified immediately.
So I picked up the phone and it was a base commander. He wanted me to know they are going to have the airplanes to take off from his base for the scrambled mission.
General Yousefi authorized an immediate scramble mission. An Iranian Air Force F-4 Phantom jet fighter was ordered to engage the UFO and determine what it was. The F-4 approached Mach 1 in its pursuit of the UFO. At an altitude of 23,000 feet, the lead pilot reported in that he clearly saw a brilliant object 75 miles ahead of him. His actual radio transmissions are heard here publicly for the first time outside Iran. The F-4 was closing fast, but when the pilot got within 10 miles of the UFO, all onboard instruments failed. The F-4 retreated and then came in for a second pass. Again, the instruments failed. It was as if an electromagnetic force field was repelling the jet fighter. The pilots never got closer than 7 miles before they were forced to retreat.
It may suggest a deliberate kind of control mechanism, perhaps from the phenomenon to the airplane system itself, such that when the airplane is no longer a threat, it can change the radiation or whatever the energy is, whatever the effect is, and so that the systems on board the airplane come back to normal.
I put down my phone and I run to my balcony to see if I can see that object. I saw a big star among the other stars, which it was at least twice as large as the normal stars. I asked the tower what happened and he said he lost the communication again.
General Yousefi ordered a second F-4 to engage the UFO. The lead pilot was Iran's #1 top gun, Major Hussein Jafari.
It was around 12 miles. We lost communication and I heard nothing from the pilots. So I was so scared what's going to happen and what happened to the pilots.
When the F-4 retreated, communication was inexplicably restored.
So I asked from the tower controller to tell them to continue their mission and see if they can get more information from the flying object.
Then Major Jafari nervously reported that a smaller UFO had emerged from the larger one and was trying to engage him.
And it was coming toward them. They tried to shoot him down. When they squeezed the trigger, it didn't work. And the trigger was inoperative. They couldn't shoot the missiles.
The pilots, fearing for their lives, tried to eject, but the eject button jammed. Every backup system was inoperable.
We understood that the eject instrument also didn't work. So in this case, I said to God, oh, God save them.
The F-4 had no choice but to go into a negative G-force dive to escape this seemingly hostile UFO. When the fighter jet was 10 miles away from the larger UFO, the smaller craft flew off, and all onboard communication and instrumentation was restored to the F-4. Major Jaffari reported that the smaller UFO appeared to be landing on a mountaintop just southeast of Teerã. This landing was confirmed on the radar by the control tower. Brigadier General Yousefi witnessed it from his balcony.
He let it down and landed underground. And now it is a communication between the mothership and that small flying object. And it shows the lights between those two. It's connected. While they were landing, the tower was screaming on the phone to me, General, this flying object is following them and is going to land in Mehrabad. It's going it is in the short final, and I see a big, big light with the glaring red, blue, and yellow lights.
The so-called mothership tailed the F-4 into Mehrabad Air Force Base and flew low over the runway. As it performed what was described as a low-altitude flyby, power at the Air Force Base went out.
That was strange for us, and we asked each other why the power went out for some seconds.
Frankly, I don't have any explanation for that, but I will say that there are other cases, well documented, where power has been disrupted on the ground over fairly large areas during UFO presence.
After the flyby, the craft roared off toward the west, as if to say, mission accomplished. Search parties were dispatched to the supposed landing site of the smaller UFO, while the tower tried to track the outbound mothership. It was spotted 25 minutes later over the Mediterranean by an Egyptian Air Force pilot. A report sightings was able to confirm with the Egyptian embassy. Then, over Lisbon, Portugal, the pilot, crew, and passengers of a KLM Airlines flight reported seeing the UFO as it sped westward to the Atlantic. That was the last sighting we know of to date.
We knew the capability of the other countries and their airplanes' capabilities. It could be a spy airplane. I really have no idea, but maybe from some other world.
The day after the otherworldly encounter over Tehran, it was front-page news in both the Farsi and English-speaking newspapers throughout Iran. At the same time, Iranian and U.S. officials were meeting behind closed doors.
This particular case is interesting from another standpoint, and that is the involvement of the American government.
General Sabahat, now in exile in California, was the vice commander of the 2nd Tactical Fighter Base. He told Sightings that the day after the UFO event, he attended a top-secret meeting between the Imperial Iranian Air Force and the U.S. Air Force.
General Secord, which was the head of the U.S. Air Force in our Air Force, probably commanding officer and operation, pilots, approach control of civil aviation.
Hussein Parouzi, an air traffic controller at Mehrabad Air Force Base, was also present at that meeting.
When they heard our report and the report of the pilot, they concluded that no country is able to have such a technology, and all of them believed it should be a strange object from other spheres.
I collected the reports and I made my own observations as a report to my higher echelon, and we sent this report through the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the Shah's intention.
They collect all of those information and send it to the United States by General Secord, because he was the head of the U.S. Air Force in our countries.
The secret meetings continued, and rumors of a calculated disinformation program seemed to be borne out by the changing face of Tehran newspaper headlines. Day 1. Day 2. Day 3. Day 4. On day 5, the press reports the entire incident is a hoax.
I don't know why the appropriate authority prohibited me to interview with the press or news reporter. I don't know why this information is prohibited from the public.
Somehow the government doesn't want to open up to the public. I don't know why, but...
Despite media dismissals of the event as a joke, our sources report that a full-scale military investigation continued to search for answers.
I asked from the pilot of the F-4 to go and to look after that flying object. He knew where it landed. And when they flew and the army personnel, they were in the area, they couldn't see anything.
The general who headed that search still lives in Tehran and denied repeated requests for an interview. But others who were present told sightings that no physical evidence of a UFO was found on the mountaintop where so many had reported seeing a small craft landing. However, for the first 3 days after the incident, there were serious electronic anomalies in the area.
The beeping sound that was picked up could be one of a number of things. It might be technology. In fact, depending on the frequency stability and interfrequency pulse and other factors like that, it very likely is a technology of some sort, as opposed to a natural phenomena.
And then there is this. An American Defense Systems Program satellite operated by the U.S. Defense Department picked up signals from an unidentifiable technology on the same night the Iranian Air Force was scrambling over Tehran. Experts from DSP are revealing this information for the first time.
We saw something.
The DSP satellite is, in fact, a spy satellite that monitors airspace in military hotspots. On the night of September 19, 1976, the satellite was scanning the skies over Tehran.
Here's the event.
That's an independent confirmation that an event of some type occurred at that time and place. What it was, we don't know.
Sightings asked the experts to explain the meaning of 238 scans, possible SR, but they told us that information was top secret.
Right now, all we can do is say, yes, there was something there.
Certain agencies, including the CIA, have gone on record as having information on this particular case.
In fact, Sightings has obtained these documents from the United States Air Force Security Service that confirm our government's involvement in the UFO investigation. And, according to this Washington Post article, the investigation was still in full force as late as 1979.
Now, what does that say? It says that somebody thought this case was very, very important when it happened. Why, after this many years, that's still important, I think is a fundamental question. And the American people deserve to know what happened.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Parviz Jafari, and I'm a retired general of Iranian Air Force. At about 11 p.m. on the evening of 18 September 1976, citizens were frightened by circling of an unknown object over Tehran, the capital city of Iran, at a low altitude. It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter. They reported it to the tower and was seen by Towerman 2. He alerted the Air Force Command Post, and Deputy General Yousefi decided to scramble an F-4 jet to investigate. The pilot in the first jet lost instrumentation and communication when he got too close to the brilliant object, so he headed back. About 10 minutes later, they scrambled a second jet, which I was piloting. At the time, I was a squadron commander. I approached the object, which was flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue. The light was so bright that I was not able to see its body. The sequence of flashes was extremely fast, like a strobe light. We locked on it with radar it was at 30 degrees left, at range of 25 miles. The size on the radar scope was comparable to that of a 707 tanker. 4 other objects with different shapes separated from the main one at different times during this close encounter. Whenever they were close to me, my weapons were jammed and my radio communications were garbled. One of the objects headed toward me. I thought it was a missile. I tried to launch a heat-seeker missile to it, but my missile panel went out. Another followed me when I was descending on the way back. One of the separated objects landed in an open area radiating a high bright light in which the sands on the ground were visible. We could hear emergency squash at all the way, which was reported by other airliners flying at the time and continued for another couple of days. During my interview at headquarters, after the incident, the American Lieutenant Colonel Além took notes, but after it was over, I could not find him to talk with. Later, once classified document was released here in America through the Freedom of Information Act, the Defense Intelligence Agency documented the event in a great detail, and it was sent to NSA, the White House, and the CIA. The DIA assessment said this case is a classic that meets all necessary conditions for a legitimate study of the UFO phenomena. Then I would be happy to answer questions and tell you more. Thank you.
Mr. Jafari, you are one of the few pilots who tried to shoot at a UFO. And can you tell us what happened when you are in the air and you have seen for the first time an object you could not explain? How looked it like?
Well, actually, something around the midnight, some people saw it above the city and they reported to the control tower of the airport, and after all they find out it's true and they saw it by themselves, so they asked us to take off. The first airplane took off, and after 10 minutes or so I took off. The first plane followed it, and when I took off he said he can't reach it even with over the speed of sound, and I told him to come back. On the way back, when he was coming, again we saw it on the middle of both of us. When I saw it, it wasn't a thing that I could see. It was some lights flashing, green, amber, blue, and red. These four colors was flashing from four sides of an object which could not be seen by itself. However, after a few minutes, when I was looking straight ahead and going through it, toward it, it all of a sudden jumped out about 10 degrees to the right, which I couldn't imagine how fast it was, and when I'm now thinking, the acceleration of the movement and also the G was taking of that movement. However, Each time I was pointing the nose of the aircraft toward this thing, after a while would jump another 10 degrees to my right. Until about 70 degrees turn, we had little by little turn to have it on the nose, and also I was climbing and going forward to it. I asked the radar, the control tower, if the ground, the airport radar has it inside. They said the radar is not operational at this moment. So my back-sitter, he told me that I locked on. I told him to brake lock and paint it very perfectly with the movement of the antenna upward. So I found out that it is above the horizon, so I was sure that it is the object, not anything else on the ground probably. So we locked on it. It was now 26 miles away us, and we figured out, we calculated the altitude was 33,000 feet. So I didn't pull up the nose too much to let the aircraft go forward also, because I find out that I have 150 knots closer airspeed. So after a while again, I was looking at it, and also inside the radar. This time when I looked at the radar, we were close to 25 miles, which it means 1 mile we got closer. And all of a sudden, by the chance of course, I was looking at the radar, I saw it jumped back about 2 miles and went to the 27 miles and stopped there. It was something unusual to have such a thing flying above that altitude and doing all these things. So between all of this wandering, I saw a round thing which was bright, about half of the size of the moon, and moving downward, came below the horizon, and from below the horizon started to come toward me. I was really scared at this time. I thought maybe this is going to be a missile or something that they launched toward me. Well, the radar was locked on the main thing, so it couldn't be used for this one, because that could take a long time to brake lock from that one to lock on this one, and plus that if I could think that it's a missile, that was no use for it. So the only thing I thought, I said maybe I use another kind of the missile to shoot at him. So when I selected the missile, by the time it was coming from the below horizon toward me and upward, when I looked to my missile panel to see if the missile is selected or not, I saw all of the instruments are fluctuating, and plus lots of statics in the radio hearing, and there was no lights inside the missile panel. So I knew there's no use for none of these things. And to jump out in case of the collusion with the second thing, which I would think that maybe it's a missile, it was very dangerous, because if I would jump out in that direction, I would we come down with the parachute right inside the blast.